What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. Today, I don't really know what to call this story. It's a little weird. I didn't know if I wanted to call it the surviving 24 hours in the ice apocalypse. Not Frozen, but like the agency ice. Or if I would do like surviving 24 hours of the Donald Trump apocalypse. But either way, it's just for fun. Don't look into it too hard. It's just for fun. Relax. So, 24 hours after. A story of survival. Act 1. The collapse. The first signs of trouble arrived not with a bang, but with a notification. Devin Park was sitting in his one-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia, scrolling through social media when his phone buzzed with an emergency alert. The message was simple, direct, and utterly terrifying. Remain indoors. Martial law declared. Further instructions to follow. Devin stared at the screen, his morning coffee growing cold beside his laptop. As a freelance data analyst who worked remotely, he'd grown accustomed to spending days alone in his apartment. But something about the alert's terseness made his stomach tighten. He tapped on his news app and was greeted by chaotic headlines and fragmented reports. Financial markets in freefall, communications disrupted across major cities, military deployment underway in Washington, New York, and Los Angeles. The articles referred to an executive order signed moments before dawn, something about extraordinary measures for extraordinary times. Commenters were already calling it the most sweeping assumption of executive power in American history. Devin's phone buzzed again with text from his sister, Maya. "You seeing this? Mom's not answering in Florida. I'm freaking out." He tried calling his mother, but the call wouldn't connect. Then he tried Maya, but got the same result. He sent a quick text. "Network's overwhelmed. Stay put. I'll come to you if things get worse." Outside his window, Devin could see people hurrying alongside the sidewalk. Some walking purposely, others running. A few were loading belongings into cars. He turned on the television, flipping through the channels. Each showed variations of the same scene. Reporters with grave expressions. Split screen showing crowds forming outside banks and grocery stores, and scrolling emergency alerts. "This is not a drill," said the newscaster on Channel 17, her voice straining for professional composure. "The president has invoked the Emergency Powers Act, citing threats to national security. Citizens are advised to remain indoors. All commercial flights have been grounded. Interstate travel is restricted." The sound of sirens pierced the morning air. Devin went to his window and saw 3 police cars speeding down the street. A helicopter thrummed overhead, its spotlight scanning the area despite the morning sunlight. His phone buzzed with another message from Maya. "National Guard on streets and corners of North Philly. Rumors of communication blackout coming. If you're gonna come now." Maya lived across the city with her husband and their 5-year-old daughter Zoe. Devin had promised his sister years ago that if anything ever happened, he would make his way to them. It was a pact they'd made half-jokingly after watching too many disaster movies together, but now the abstract had become terrifyingly concrete. He stood at his window, calculating. The drive would normally take 20 minutes, but with the chaos unfolding, who knew? Public transportation might already be suspended. Walking would take over an hour. And what if the rumors about a communications blackout were true? What if he couldn't find them once he was out there? Another police siren wailed. Something crashed in the distance, glass breaking. Perhaps a storefront. It's decision time. Devin grabbed his emergency backpack, a relic from his brief Boy Scout days that he'd maintained as an adult, partly out of practicality and partly out of the anxiety that had followed him since childhood. He stuffed it with additional items, extra batteries, his portable charger, a first aid kit, and 3 bottles of water, energy bars, and a small envelope of cash he kept for emergencies. He changed into sturdy boots, jeans, and layers topped with a waterproof jacket. As he was about to leave, His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked frantically on his door. "Devin, have you heard from your mother in Florida?" she asked, her normally composed voice trembling. "My son lives there too, in Tampa. The phones aren't working, and there are reports of—" She stopped, her eyes welling with tears. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "I'm trying to reach my family too," Devin said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "The networks are overwhelmed. I'm sure they're okay." "Where are you going?" Mrs. Chen asked, eyeing his backpack. "To my sister's place. It's across town. I promised I'd be there if anything happened." Mrs. Chen nodded, understanding. "Be careful. Things are getting ugly out there." Devin hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to come with me? My sister has space, and I don't like the idea of leaving you alone." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "I'll be fine. My daughter is coming for me. She texted just before the networks got congested. But thank you." She squeezed his arm. "You're a good man, Devin Park." After Mrs. Chen left, Devin stood in the doorway, taking one last look at his apartment. The place he'd called home for the past 3 years suddenly felt like a museum exhibit of a life that was rapidly becoming the past. He closed the door without locking it, a small act of hope that he would return. Outside, the air was thick with tension. Neighbors hurried past each other without making eye contact, clutching phones and bags of hastily gathered supplies. A line had formed at the ATM on the corner, and 2 men were arguing loudly about someone cutting in line. Devin checked his phone again. The signal bars were dropping. Mai had sent another message. "Streets getting blocked. Checkpoints being set up. Hurry." He decided against taking his car. The traffic gridlock was visible from his street, and there were reports of major arteries being closed down. Instead, he headed for his bike, a reliable hybrid that had served him well on weekend rides along the river trail. As he unlocked it from the rack behind his building, a voice called out, "You heading out?" It was Elijah, the building's maintenance manager, loading bottles of water into the back of his pickup truck. "Yeah, I'm going to my sister's," Devin said, securing his backpack. "Well, good luck with that," Elijah replied grimly. "They're setting up checkpoints on major intersections. National Guard and police, saying it's for safety. But word is they're filtering who gets through, checking IDs." "What do you mean, filtering?" Elijah glanced around before lowering his voice. "A friend of mine works at City Hall. Said there's a list. People they're looking for." "What kind of list?" "The kind you don't want to be on." Elijah slammed his truck door shut. "Be careful out there. Don't take Broad Street. They've got it locked down tight." Devin nodded, processing the information. "Thanks for the heads up." "Hey," Elijah called as Devin was about to pedal away. "Take this." He handed Devin a small 2-way radio. "Old school, but it might work when the cell towers don't. Channel 7 if you need anything." Devin took the radio, oddly touched. "Thanks, man." "Don't mention it. We look out for our own around here." With that cryptic, parting comment, Elijah climbed into his truck and drove off in the direction opposite of Maya's neighborhood. Devin clipped the radio to his belt and began his journey across a city rapidly descending into chaos. The familiar streets now felt alien and hostile. He took side streets and alleys, avoiding the main thoroughfares where he could see flashing lights and uniformed personnel establishing checkpoints. At one intersection, he spotted a group of men in civilian clothes but with matching armbands, directing traffic and questioning pedestrians. They weren't police or National Guard. Private security, maybe, or some kind of neighborhood watch that had materialized in the past few hours. Devin swerved down an alley to avoid them. The radio at his hip crackled to life. "Checkpoints. All major bridges and tunnels. Repeat. Checkpoints established at all major bridges and tunnels. ID required for passage. Groups of 3 or more subject to dispersal until emergency provision 7. The voice faded into static. Devin tried switching channels, but found only fragments of conversations, most conveying the same message. Movement was being restricted, communication was failing, and nobody knew exactly why. Halfway to Maya's neighborhood, Devin encountered a roadblock. 3 police vehicles were parked across the street, and officers were turning people away. He dismounted his bike and walked it along the sidewalk, trying to blend in without other pedestrians who were being redirected. "Sir, where are you headed?" An officer approached him, hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. "I'm just going home," Devin replied, gesturing vaguely in the direction he was walking. "ID," the officer demanded, holding out his hand. Devin produced his driver's license. The officer took it and scanned it with a handheld device. When the device beeped, the officer examined the screen, then looked at Devin with renewed interest. "Data analyst?" "Yes." "Working where?" "Freelance. I got multiple clients." The officer studied him for a moment longer before returning the license. "This area is being secured. Find another way." "Can I ask why?" The officer's expression hardened. "You can ask. I don't have to answer. Get out of here." Devin took his license back and continued walking. His heart rate elevated. Once out of sight, he checked his phone. No signal at all. The communication blackout had begun. He tried to orient himself. Maya's apartment was still about 2 miles away, mostly through its residential areas. He'd need to find a way through his checkpoint and any others that might be in his path. As he deliberated, a small group of people emerged from an alley. They were moving with purpose, clearly familiar with the area. One of them, a woman with close-cropped hair and glasses, noticed Devin standing with his bike. "You trying to get through?" she asked. Devin nodded. "Follow us," she said. "We know a way." He hesitated, assessing the group. They were a mixed bunch. The woman who spoke to him, an older man with a professor's bearing, and 2 younger individuals who could have been college students. "I'm Layla," the woman offered, perhaps sensing his reluctance. "That's Dr. Abernathy, and those 2 are Zach and Emma. We're headed to the community center on Fairmount. It's becoming a kind of info hub." "I'm Devin. I need to get to my sister's place on the other side of this checkpoint." "Then you definitely want to come with us," Layla said. "The main routes are all blocked. We've been using the old service tunnels on the community college." Devin considered his options. Trust strangers in a crisis? But what choice did he have? "Lead the way," he said. The group led him down several side streets, eventually reaching a maintenance entrance behind the community college. Dr. Abernathy produced a key card that granted him access. "I teach engineering here," he explained, seeing Devin's questioning look. "Or I did, until this morning. Now I'm not sure what any of us are anymore." Inside, they navigated dimly lit utility corridors that connected various buildings in the campus complex. The tunnels were meant for maintenance workers, not public access, but they provided a clear path under the streets that were now being controlled above. "We've been relaying information," Layla explained as they walked. "The official channels are all saying the same thing. Martial law, stay indoors, await further instructions. But something bigger is happening. It's not just here, it's nationwide." "What exactly is happening?" Devin asked. "A purge," Dr. Abernathy said grimly. "A systematic identification and detainment of certain categories of people. Started with journalists, then moved to academics, community organizers, people with certain political affiliations." "Based on what? How do they know who to target?" "Data," Layla said simply. "Social media profiles, voting records, financial transactions, search histories. All the digital breadcrumbs we've been leaving for years. They're feeding it into some kind of algorithm to identify persons of interest." Devin felt a chill. As a data analyst, he knew exactly how such systems would work, how patterns of behavior could be analyzed to categorize people, how predictive models would flag individuals based on correlation invisible to the human eye. "The algorithm doesn't even have to be accurate," Dr. Abernathy added. "It just has to provide plausible justification for sweeping up anything they want." They emerged from the tunnels into a small courtyard behind a row of buildings. From here, they would go their separate ways. "The community center is 3 blocks that way," Layla pointed. "Your sister's neighborhood?" "About a mile north," Devin said. "Be careful. They're especially active around residential areas, looking for specific addresses." Devin thanked them for their help. and they parted ways. As he continued his journey, the city seemed to enter a strange lull. Fewer people on the streets now, more windows shuttered, an occasional military vehicle passing by. His radio crackled again. Confirm reports of detention centers being established at the sports complex and convention center. Citizens are advised to comply with all identification protocols. The message was coming through more clearly now, the voice more authoritative. It wasn't a scattered emergency communication anymore. It was a coordinated broadcast. Devin turned the radio off. Better to move in silence. As he approached Maya's neighborhood, he saw what appeared to be a systematic operation underway. Uniformed personnel were going door to door, clipboard in hand. At some houses, they merely spoke with the residents and moved on. At others, individuals were being escorted out to waiting vehicles. Devin ducked into a narrow space between two buildings and considered his next move. Maya's apartment was just 2 blocks away, but the street was being actively canvassed. He couldn't risk approaching directly. He remembered that Maya's building had a service entrance that connected to the alley behind it. If he could circle around and approach them from the rear, he might be able to reach her without being observed. Taking a deep breath, Devin began the final leg of his journey, keeping to shadows and side passages. His sister's safety the only clear thought in a mind otherwise clouded with questions about what was happening to his world. Act 2. The Crucible. The alley behind Maya's apartment building was mercifully empty when Devin arrived. He stashed his bike behind a dumpster and approached the service entrance, hoping Maya had told him the truth about the door code never being changed. He punched in 4721 and let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding when the lock clicked open. Inside, the service corridor was dim and smelled of cleaning supplies. Devin moved quietly, listening for any sounds that might indicate danger. He reached the stairwell and began climbing to the 4th floor where Maya lived with her husband, Neil, and their daughter. The stairwell door opened to a hallway that looked surprisingly normal, almost jarring so, given what was happening outside. Devin moved swiftly to apartment 407 and knocked softly on the pattern they'd used as children. 2 quick taps, pause, 3 quick taps. The door opened almost immediately, and Maya pulled him inside before he could speak. Her face was pale but composed, her dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail. "Thank God," she whispered, hugging him tightly. "I've been watching from the window. They're going building by building." "Who is?" Devin asked, though he already knew the answer. "Military police and some others. Civilian clothes but official looking. They have lists, Devin. They're taking people." Devin glanced around the apartment. "Where are Neil and Zoe?" Maya's expression tightened. Neil went to check on his parents early this morning when the first alerts came through. They live in that senior community in Germantown. I haven't heard from him since the phones went down. She led Devin into the living room where Zoe was sitting on the floor, coloring with intense concentration, as if the activity could shield her from the reality outside. "Hey, Munchkin," Devin said, kneeling beside his niece. Zoe looked up, her face brightening. "Uncle Devin! Did you come for the adventure?" Devin shot a questioning look at Maya, who mouthed, "I told her we might need to go on an adventure." "That's right," Devin said, managing a smile for Zoe. "Are you being brave for your mom?" Zoe nodded solemnly. "I packed my backpack all by myself. Mom said we could bring one special thing. I'm bringing Rocket." She held up a well-loved stuffed raccoon. "Excellent choice," Devin said. "Zoe, sweetie, why don't you go make sure Rocket is safely in your backpack?" Maya suggested. When Zoe had left the room, Maya pulled Devin to the window. From their vantage point, they could see uniformed personnel methodically working their way through the apartment complex across the street. "They have a system," Maya said quietly. "They check IDs against their tablets. Some people they leave alone. Others they take. I've seen them take at least 7 people just in the last hour." "Any pattern to who they're taking?" Maya shook her head. "Not that I can tell. Different ages, genders, but they're definitely looking for specific people." "Did they come to this building yet?" "Not yet, but they will." Maya turned to face him. Neil called just before the phones went down. His parents' community was one of the first places they hit. They were taking people there too. Is Neil okay? Maya's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. The call dropped. I've been trying to reach him, but nothing goes through. Devin placed a steadying hand on his sister's shoulder. We need to decide what to do. Do we stay here and hope they don't have your names on the lists? Or do we try to leave? I've been thinking about that, Maya said. Neil's friend Marcus has a place in the Poconos. It's remote and well stocked. We've been there for weekends. If we could just get there. That's at least 2 hours away under normal circumstances, Devin pointed out. With roadblocks and checkpoints, it could be impossible. I know, but sitting here waiting for them to come feels worse. A knock at the door froze them both. 3 sharp, authoritative knocks that couldn't be mistaken for anyone friendly. Maya's eyes widened in panic. Zoe came running from her room, looking confused. Mom? Someone's at the door. Maya put a finger to her lips, then whispered, Zoe, remember our hiding game? Go to the special spot now. Uncle Devin and I will come to get you. Zoe nodded, her eyes wide with understanding beyond her years. She disappeared into what Devin knew was a closet with a false back panel that led to a maintenance space. It was one of the features that originally attracted Maya and Neil to the apartment. An architectural quirk that had joked could serve as a panic room if needed. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Building inspector, open up! Maya grabbed 2 backpacks that had been sitting ready by the couch. She handed one to Devin and slugged the other over her shoulder. There's a fire escape at the end of the hall that leads to the alley, she whispered. We need to get Zoe and go. Devin nodded, following Maya to retrieve his niece from her hiding spot. Zoe emerged, clutching Rocket, her face solemn. Are we going on an adventure now? She asked, her voice small. Yes, sweetie, Maya replied, helping Zoe into her small backpack. Remember how we practiced being super quiet? We need to do that now. The knocking had turned to pounding. A voice called out, This is your final warning before we enter by force. They slipped out into the alleyway, just as the sound of splintering wood came from the apartment's front door. Maya led them to the emergency exit at the end of the hall, pushing the panic bar slowly to minimize noise. The fire escape was rusted but stable, zigzagging down the side of the hallway. Maya went first, then Zoe, with Devin bringing up the rear. They descended as quickly and quietly as possible, freezing when voices could be heard from an open window they passed. No sign of them. Neighbors said the husband left this morning. What about the woman and child? Supposed to be here. Keep searching. They're on the priority list. Maya's face went white at these words. She caught Devin's eyes, her expression a mix of fear and confirmation. They had been right to run. They reached the bottom of the fire escape and dropped into the alley. Devin retrieved his bike while Maya hoisted Zoe onto her hip. What's the plan? Devin asked. The subway, Maya replied. If it's still running, we can take it to the northern terminal, then find a way out of the city from there. And if it's not running, then we walk, Maya said grimly. We need to get off the grid. No electronic trail. These people are using data to find targets, and we don't know what flags us in their system. They moved through back alleys and side streets, avoiding main roads where checkpoints had been established. Twice they had to hide when patrols passed. Zoe remained remarkably quiet throughout, her small face serious as she clung to her mother. When they reached the subway station, they found it operational but heavily monitored. Armed guards were checking IDs before allowing people to enter. We can't risk it, Devin said, pulling Maya back from the entrance. They're checking everyone. We need to find another way out of the city, Maya said. Devin thought of Elijah in his truck. I might know someone who could help, but we need to go back to my building. How far is it? About 3 miles. We can make it before dark if we move quickly. Maya adjusted Zoe on her hip. Lead the way. They set off, Devin pushing his bike while Maya carried Zoe. The city had taken on an eerie quality. Streets that should have been busy with afternoon traffic were nearly empty. Occasionally they passed small groups of people hurrying with purpose, avoiding eye contact. The radio at Devin's hip crackled to life unexpectedly. Anyone on this channel? Anyone on this channel? This is Elijah, building residents. If you can hear me, check in. Devin pulled out the radio and responded. Elijah, it's Devin. I'm with my sister and niece. We're trying to get back to the building. Static. Then Elijah's voice came back. Devin, where are you? They came through here about an hour ago, checking everyone, taking some. We're about 2 miles out, coming from the north side. Be careful. Got mobile units patrolling. Meet at the loading dock before the laundromat. I'll watch for you. Roger that. Devin pulled Maya into the conversation. Can we trust him? She asked. I think so. He warned me about the checkpoints earlier, and he gave me this radio. They continued their journey, now with a specific destination in mind. As they moved through the city, they began to see more signs of resistance. Graffiti had appeared on walls. Resist and no lists, sprayed painted hastily. In one neighborhood, they passed a community center where people were gathering, exchanging information and supplies. We should stop, Maya suggested. Maybe someone knows about Neil. Devin hesitated. It could be dangerous. These gatherings are probably being watched. But Maya was already approaching the center, Zoe still in her arms. Devin followed reluctantly. Inside, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Tables had been set up where volunteers were distributing water, food, and basic medical supplies. A large map on the wall was covered with pins and notes, apparently tracking checkpoint locations and safe routes. A woman with a clipboard approached them. Names? Maya hesitated, then said, We're looking for information about my husband, Neil Reeves. He was in Germantown this morning. The woman consulted a list. Reeves. Yeah, we have a Neil Reeves registered at our sister location in Germantown. He's safe. Maya's knees nearly buckled with relief. Can you tell me where he is now? He's helping coordinating evacuations for seniors who are being targeted. Left about an hour ago with a convoy heading north. Said he was going to try to reach a property in the Poconos. The information aligned perfectly with that Maya had told Devin earlier. Neil was alive and heading for their friend's mountain retreat, if they could reach him there. How are you planning to get out of the city? The woman asked. We have a contact, Devin said vaguely. Someone with transport. The woman nodded. Be careful. They're stopping vehicles at all official exits from the city, checking IDs, scanning faces with some kind of portable tech. Any advice on avoiding them? Maya asked. The old industrial canal route, the woman replied. It's not well known, and it connects service roads that bypass the main checkpoints. Here. She marked the route on a small map and handed it to Maya. Good luck. They thanked her and continued on their way, new hope lending energy to their tired limbs. As they approached Devin's neighborhood, they spotted more military vehicles and had to take cover several times to avoid patrols. The laundromat Elijah had mentioned was only a few blocks from Devin's apartment building. As they approached the loading dock, Devin whispered in the radio, Elijah, we're here. Almost immediately, a door opened, and Elijah beckoned them inside. They slipped through into a storage area filled with industrial washing machines and dryers. Glad you made it, Elijah said, closing the door behind them. The situation's going to shit fast. What's happening? Devin asked. Some kind of security operation they're calling Domestic Tranquility Initiative. They're detaining people based on some kind of classification system. Heard one of them mention Category 3 and 4 designations when they were checking IDs in our building. Did they take anyone? Maya asked. Mrs. Petrov from 3B, and that journalist guy from the 5th floor, and a few others. Elijah shook his head. They had tablets with their pictures already loaded. Knew exactly who they were looking for. What about us? Devin asked. Are we on their list? Don't know about you, Elijah said to Devin, but I overheard them talking about a Maya Reeves and dependent. They were particularly interested in finding you, he added, looking at Maya. Something about your work? Maya's face paled. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been involved in several high-profile asylum cases. and my firm filed a class action lawsuit against border detention policies last year. I mean, that could do it, Elijah said grimly. They're targeting people with certain profiles. Activists, lawyers, journalists, academics. Anyone who might organize resistance or document what's happening. We need to get out of the city, Devin said. Maya's husband is heading to a property in the Poconos. If we can get there. I can help with that, Elijah replied. I've got my truck loaded with supplies. Was planning to head out myself, lay low for a while. The Poconos is as good as a destination as any. Why are you helping us? Maya asked, her voice cautious. Elijah's expression softened as he looked at Zoe, who had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder. Because this isn't the America I signed up to defend. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Didn't do that so I could watch my own government hunt down citizens based on some algorithm. He led them through the laundromat to a small apartment at the back where he apparently lived. We'll wait until dark. Roads are less patrolled then. I've got some food if you're hungry. They ate a simple meal of canned beans and beef jerky, saving most of their supplies for the journey ahead. Zoe woke up long enough to eat a little and drink some water before drifting off again, the day's stress taking its toll. What do you know about these detention centers? Devin asked Elijah as they were waiting for nightfall. Not much. They're using the sports complex and convention center for processing. After that, people are being transported somewhere else. There are rumors about repurposed military installations, but nothing's confirmed. And no one's fighting back? Maya asked. Some are, Elijah replied. There's a network forming. People sharing info, helping others escape. That's how I knew about the door-to-door operation before they started. As darkness fell, they prepared to leave. Elijah's truck was parked in an alley behind the laundromat, hidden under a tarp. It was an old F-150. Nothing flashy, but solid and reliable. We'll take the back roads, Elijah explained as they loaded their few belongings. I know some routes that won't be on their radar. They settled into the truck, Maya and Zoe in the back seat, Devin up front with Elijah. As they pulled out into the night, Devin caught a last glimpse of the neighborhood. The familiar skyline was punctuated by new elements, searchlights sweeping across the darkness, helicopters hovering like predatory birds, plumes of smoke rising from scattered locations. The city he had called home was becoming unrecognizable. And as they drove away, navigating carefully through side streets and industrial zones, he wondered what kind of America they would find beyond its borders. Whether the chaos was contained in major cities, or had spread throughout the nation, whether there was anywhere left to hide from algorithms that could label human beings as threats with cold precision of machines. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a path forward that was uncertain but necessary. Behind them, Philadelphia burned, not in a literal conflagration, but in the slow, methodical dismantling of civil liberties, one targeting citizen at a time. Act 3. The Reckoning. The truck moved quietly through the darkness, its headlights dimmed to reduce visibility. Elijah navigated the back roads with the confidence of someone who had studied escape routes long before they were needed. Devin sat beside him, consulting the map they'd been given at the community center, while Maya and Zoe slept fitfully in the back seat. How much farther to the industrial canal route? Devin asked, keeping his voice low. About 10 miles, Elijah replied. Should reach it in about 30 minutes if we don't hit any checkpoints. The countryside outside of Philadelphia was eerily silent. Occasionally they passed isolated houses with lights still burning, but most dwellings were dark. Their occupants either fled or hiding inside. Twice they had to divert from their planned route to avoid military vehicles moving in convoy toward the city. The radio Elijah had rigged to his truck's dashboard crackled with intermittent updates. Most were official broadcasts repeating the same message about martial law and civilian compliance. But occasionally, they caught fragments of alternative communication, code words and brief exchanges between what appeared to be resistance groups. Liberty acknowledges Phoenix. Minuteman status confirmed. Blackout in Sector 7. Moving to alternate. Devin found himself straining to make sense of this cryptic message, wondering what kind of network had formed so quickly in response to the crisis. How long had these people been preparing? How many had seen the warning signs that he had missed? As they approached the canal route, Elijah slowed the truck. "Something's not right," he muttered, pointing ahead. In the distance, lights were visible. Not the sweep of searchlights or the flash of emergency vehicles, but the steady glow of industrial floodlights. Someone had established a presence at the very route they were planning to take. "Could be a checkpoint," Devin suggested, "or an ambush." "Only one way to find out," Elijah replied grimly, turning off the road into a dirt track that paralleled their intended route. "We'll approach on foot, see what we're dealing with." He parked the truck behind an abandoned warehouse and turned to Maya, who had awakened at the change in motion. "We need to scout ahead. You stay with Zoe. If we're not back in 20 minutes, there's a map in the glove compartment. A different route's marked in red." Maya nodded, her face resolute in the dim light. "Be careful." Devin followed Elijah in the night, moving silently through overgrown industrial lots toward the glow of lights. As they drew closer, they could make out the scene. A makeshift checkpoint had been established where the canal route intersected with the service road. But it wasn't military police. "Civilians," Elijah whispered. "Private security looks like." Indeed, the men manning the checkpoints wore no uniforms but carried weapons and moved with military precision. They had set up a perimeter with vehicles and portable barriers, and were checking IDs of the few travelers attempting to pass. "Who are they?" Devin asked. "Contractors, most likely. Private security firms activated under the emergency protocols. They're filling gaps where military and police don't have enough personnel." They watched as a family in a minivan was stopped and questioned. IDs were checked against tablets similar to the ones Devin had seen earlier. After a tense conversation, the family was allowed to proceed, but not before their vehicle was searched and something, supplies perhaps, was confiscated. "We can't go through there," Devin said. "They'll flag Maya for sure." "No," Elijah agreed, "but there's another way." He pointed to a narrow path that ran alongside the canal itself. "The old maintenance track. It's overgrown now, but passable on foot. If you can get the truck through, we bypass the checkpoint completely." They returned to the truck and explained the situation to Maya. "It's risky," Elijah admitted. "The track hasn't been maintained in years, but it's our best shot at getting past that checkpoint undetected." "What if we get stuck?" Maya asked, glancing at Zoe, who was still asleep. "Then we continue on foot," Devin said firmly. "Either way, we're not turning back." With Maya's agreement, Elijah drove the truck carefully toward the maintenance track, cutting the headlights completely as they approached. The path was barely visible in the moonlight, overgrown with weeds and partially blocked by the fallen debris, but it was just wide enough for the vehicle. The truck crawled forward at a walking pace, its tires crunching softly on gravel and vegetation. Everyone held their breath as they passed, within 100 yards of the checkpoint, hidden only by darkness and a thin line of trees. Once they had to stop completely when a searchlight swept in their direction, but it moved on without pausing. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they emerged onto a service road past the checkpoint. Elijah allowed himself a small smile of triumph as he accelerated gently, putting distance between them and danger. "We did it," Maya whispered, stroking Zoe's hair. "We're out." "Not quite," Elijah cautioned. "That was just the first hurdle. We've still got to get to the Poconos without being reported." The night wore on as they traveled north, taking rural routes and forest roads whenever possible. Around 3 a.m., they crossed into an area where the radio reception changed noticeably. The official broadcasts were more fragmented here, interspersed with bursts of static and occasional clear voices from what appeared to be amateur operators. "Confirm reports of resistance in Pittsburgh. Military withdrawal from certain sectors. Rumors of division within the administration." "What does it mean?" Devin asked, straining to hear through the static. "Means the situation's fluid," Elijah replied. "This kind of operation, it depends on quick, overwhelming force and information control. If they lose either advantage, cracks start to show." "So there's hope?" Maya asked, leaning forward from the back seat. "There's always hope," Elijah said, though his tone suggested he'd seen too much to believe it fully. The landscape had changed. becoming more densely forested as they entered the foothills of the Poconos. Dawn was approaching, the eastern sky lightening to a pale gray. They had driven through the night without major incident, but fatigue was setting in, and Elijah's responses were becoming slower. "We need a rest," Devin said. "You can't keep driving like this." Elijah nodded reluctantly. "There's a state park up ahead. Should be deserted this time of year. We could pull over, catch a few hours of sleep before continuing." They found a secluded spot within the park, positioning the truck so it was hidden from the main access road. Elijah and Devin took turns keeping watch while Maya and Zoe slept more comfortably in the back seat. During his watch, Devin attempted to capture a signal on his phone, hoping that outside the city there might be some connectivity returning. To his surprise, he found a weak signal. No data, but enough for text messages. He composed one to his mother in Florida. "Mom, we're safe. With Maya and Zoe. Heading to safe location. Don't use phone. Don't trust official channels. Find somewhere safe. We'll contact when possible. Love you." He hit send and watched as the message status changed from sending to delivered. There was no way to know if his mother would receive it, or what conditions were like in Florida, but it was all he could do. As dawn broke fully, they continued their journey. The roads were becoming steeper, winding through mountain passes where the fall foliage created a brilliant display of reds and golds. Under different circumstances, it would have been a beautiful drive. They were about an hour from their destination when Elijah suddenly cursed and hit the brakes. Ahead, blocking the road, was a fallen tree. It wasn't especially large, possibly could be moved with enough people, but it created an effective barricade. "Is it natural or deliberate?" Maya asked, voicing what they were all thinking. "I don't know," Elijah said, scanning the surrounding forest. "But I don't like it. Perfect spot for an ambush." They sat in tense silence, evaluating their options. The road was narrow here, with steep embankments on either side. Turning around would be difficult, and they had no guarantee the way back was still clear. "I'll check it out," Devin offered, reaching for the door handle. "No," Elijah said sharply. "I'll go. I have more experience in this kind of situation." Before anyone could argue, he had slipped out of the truck and was moving cautiously toward the fallen tree, keeping to the side of the road where the tree offered some kind of coverage. Devin watched anxiously from the driver's seat, where he had moved in case they needed to make a quick exit. Maya and Zoe remained in the back, Maya's arm protectively around her daughter, who had awakened and was watching the scene with wide, solemn eyes. Elijah had almost reached the tree when movement caught Devin's eye. A flash of something in the woods at the right of the road. Before he could call it a warning, a shot rang out. Elijah dropped to the ground immediately, rolling in the ditch beside the road. More shots followed, kicking up dirt around him. Devin reacted instinctively, throwing the truck in reverse and backing up rapidly until a bend in the road provided cover. "Stay down!" he shouted to Maya and Zoe, who had ducked below the windows of the first shot. "Is Elijah okay?" Maya asked, her voice tight with fear. "I don't know. I saw him take cover, but then we had to move." They waited, hearts pounding for any sign of their companion. After several minutes of silence, the radio on the truck crackled to life. "Devin, you copy?" It was Elijah's voice, strained but alive. Devin grabbed his handset. "I copy, you okay?" "Grazed my arm, but I'm mobile. There's at least 3 of them, armed. Don't think they're military or police. More likely, independent operators." "Bounty hunters," Maya whispered, her face pale. "Listen," Elijah continued. "There's a forestry service road about a half a mile back. Not on most maps. It's rough but passable. We'll eventually connect with Route 423. Take it and keep going north." "What about you?" Devin asked. "I'll keep him busy. I'll meet you at the destination if I can." "Elijah, no!" "No time to argue, kid. Go, now." The radio went silent. Seconds later, they heard more gunfire. Elijah returned fire from his position, drawing attention away from them. With a heavy heart, Devin turned the truck around and headed back, searching for the forestry road Elijah had mentioned. They found it, little more than a dirt track cutting through dense forest, and began the slow, jarring journey across terrain that tested the truck's suspension. "Will he be okay?" Zoe asked, her first word since the shooting began. "Elijah's very smart and very brave," Maya told her, not quite answering the question. "He knows what he's doing." They drove in tense silence for nearly an hour, the rudimentary road gradually improving until it joined a larger gravel track that showed signs of recent use. Eventually, this led them to Route 423, just as Elijah had promised. "How much further to your friend's place?" Devin asked Maya. She consulted a map. "About 20 miles. It's up in the mountains, isolated, had its own power and water supply." "Sounds like your friend was a prepper," Devin remarked. "Marcus always said the world was more fragile than people realized," Maya replied. "I guess he was right." They continued north, the truck's gas gauge now dipping toward empty. They would make it to the property, but not much farther without refueling. As they neared their destination, they began to see signs of other refugees from the cities. Cars and trucks parked at remote cabins, people moving supplies, makeshift barriers across private roads. Like them, others had sought safety in isolation. The entrance to Marcus's property was unmarked except for a metal gate post with a numeric keypad. Maya entered a code, and the heavy gate swung open to reveal a long, winding driveway that led up into the mountains. "Neil said he'd leave signs if he made it here," Maya said, scanning the road anxiously. About halfway up the drive, they found what they were looking for: a child's stuffed animal, a twin to Zoe's rocket, placed deliberately on a fence post. "Daddy's here!" Zoe exclaimed, suddenly animated. "He brought Rocket's brother!" The driveway ended at a large, rustic-looking house built into the side of the mountain. Solar panels covered the south-facing roof, and a small wind turbine spun on a tower nearby. A stream cascaded down the mountainside, presumably providing water. As they pulled up, the front door opened, and Neil ran out, followed by an older couple who had to be his parents. The reunion was emotional. Tears and tight embraces as the family came together amid the chaos that had torn their world apart. Inside the house, they found not just Neil and his parents, but several other families, friends and colleagues who had needed Neil's warnings and fled the city before the worst of the crackdowns began. The house was large and well stocked, with enough room and supplies for everyone. While Zoe reunited with her father, showing him her backpack and rocket, Maya pulled Devin aside. "What about Elijah?" she asked quietly. "We should try to go back for him." Devin shook his head reluctantly. "We don't know where he is now, and going back down those roads could be dangerous." He looked out the window at the mountains surrounding them. "If he makes it, he knows where to find us." That evening, they gathered at a large table for a communal meal. Despite the circumstances, there was a sense of cautious relief. They had made it to safety, at least temporarily. They had food, shelter, and the company of others who had understood what they were facing. After dinner, they assembled in the living room where Marcus, a gruff, bearded man in his 50s, had set up a sophisticated communications center, multiple radios, satellite equipment, and a computer system powered by the house's independent energy supply. "I've been monitoring frequencies all day," Marcus explained, getting a clearer picture of what's happening. "It's not just Pennsylvania, it's nationwide, but it's not monolithic." He tuned one of the radios to a frequency that was broadcasting what appeared to be an underground news service. "Resistance continues to grow as military and law enforcement divisions splinter. At least 3 state governors have declared the federal emergency measures unconstitutional and ordered their National Guard to protect citizens from federal agents. Pentagon sources report significant dissent within the armed forces, with some units refusing orders to detain American citizens." "It's happening faster than they expected," Neil commented. "The algorithm identified too many targets, spread resources too thin, and they underestimated the resistance." "What about the people they've already detained?" Maya asked. "What happens to them?" "That's the question," Marcus replied grimly. "From what we're hearing, processing centers are already overcrowded. They can't transport or house everyone they've taken." "So what's the end game?" Devin asked, the question that had been haunting him since the crisis began. Marcus adjusted another dial, and a different voice came through. "Official, authoritative but strained. Remain calm in your homes. The Domestic Tranquility Initiative is proceeding as planned. Individuals identified as potential threats to national security are being temporarily detained for questioning. Law-abiding citizens have nothing to fear. Resistance to lawful authority will be met with full force of... The broadcast dissolved into static, and then silence. Their communications network is failing, Marcus said. Too many technicians and engineers among the people they've targeted. Systems are breaking down. So what do we do now? I asked. Just wait it out here? Neil took her hand. For now, yes. We're safe here. We have supplies, communication with the outside world. We wait. We gather info. When the time is right, we decide what comes next. Devin moved to the window, looking out at the darkness that had fallen over the mountains. Somewhere out there, Elijah might be making his way toward them. His mother in Florida might be reading his text message. And across the country, millions of Americans were facing the same questions, making the same calculations about resistance or compliance. Flight or fight. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Devin woke early and found Marcus already at his communications station, a cup of coffee in his hand and a grim expression on his face. What is it? Devin asked. Listen, Marcus replied, turning up the volume on one of his radios. A voice Devin recognized was speaking. The president himself. Though he sounded different somehow. Less confident, perhaps. More defensive. Regrettable excesses in the implementation of the Domestic Tranquility Initiative. Effective immediately. I am ordering a review of all detentions and the immediate release of any individuals not directly linked to the specific threats. Furthermore, I am establishing an independent commission to investigate allegations of civil rights violations during the national emergency. Marcus switched to another frequency, where an analyst was breaking down the speech. Clear sign the administration is backpedaling. Sources inside the White House report a major rift between the president and military leadership, with at least 2 joint chiefs threatening resignation over the constitutionality of the detention program. Meanwhile, protesters have erupted in at least 27 major cities, and several federal judges have issued emergency injunctions against further detentions. Devin felt a surge of hope. It's collapsing, he said. The whole operation. Maybe, Marcus cautioned. Or it could be tactical. Retreat, regroup, try again later with better preparations. These kind of power grabs rarely succeed in the first attempt. They're test runs. Throughout the day, more people arrived at the property. Friends of friends, colleagues of Neil and Maya, all fleeing the chaos in the cities. Each brought new information, new perspectives on what was happening. A consistent picture began to emerge. The crackdown was failing. Not because of any single factor, but because of 1,000 small points of resistance. Communities sheltering target individuals. Technical workers sabotaging the systems meant to track them. Military and police refusing orders they considered illegal. By evening, the news was even more dramatic. The president had fired the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence, both architects of the Domestic Tranquility Initiative. Detention centers were being opened, with confused detainees emerging to waiting cameras and microphones. Their stories of arbitrary arrest fueling public outrage. As night fell, Devin stepped outside onto the deck that wrapped around the house. The mountain air was crisp, the stars brilliant in the clear sky. Below, the lights of scattered towns and isolated homes created constellations of their own. He heard the door open behind him and turned to see Maya joining him. Any word from Elijah? She asked. Devin shook his head. Nothing yet. But with communications improving, there's still hope. They stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the landscape and all it's represented. A temporary refuge. A vantage point from which to witness the convulsions that had gripped their nation. I've been thinking, Maya said finally, about what happens next, when this is all over, or at least contained. What kind of country will we return to? I don't know, Devin admitted. Something different. Something changed. Neil wants to stay up here. Says the cities aren't safe anymore. That this is just the first wave. that they'll try again. Better prepared next time. And you? Maya sighed. I'm an immigration attorney. My clients need me. I can't abandon them because the system showed its teeth. It did more than show its teeth, Devin pointed out. It tried to devour you. All the more reason to go back and fight. If people like me, people with privilege, education, and resources, if we retreat to the mountains, who will stand for those who can't escape? Devin nodded, understanding her perspective, even as he weighed his own decision. His life in Philadelphia seemed distant now, almost part of another reality. The work he did, the data he analyzed. He had never considered how it might be weaponized, how algorithms could categorize human beings as threats based on patterns of behavior or association. Whatever you decide, he told his sister, I'll support you. The door opened again, and Neil stepped out, his face animated with excitement. You need to come inside, he said. Now! They followed him back to the communications room where everyone had gathered on the radio. A familiar voice was speaking, rough with fatigue but unmistakable. Repeat. This is Elijah Thompson broadcasting on emergency frequency 7, looking for Devin Park and Maya Reeves. If you can hear me, I'm at the ranger station on Route 940. Vehicle disabled, but I'm mobile. Please respond. Marcus handed Devin the microphone. Your friend's alive. With shaking hands, Devin pressed the transmit button. Elijah, this is Devin. We hear you. We're sending someone to pick you up. Hang tight. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Neil and Marcus set out in Marcus's truck to retrieve Elijah, while the others prepared food and medical supplies, not knowing what condition he might be in. When they returned, Elijah was with them, exhausted, his left arm bandaged, but very much alive. The reunion was joyous, with Zoe rushing to hug the man who had helped bring her family to safety. Over a late meal, Elijah recounted his escape from the ambush, how he had led his pursuers on a chase through the forest before losing them in a ravine. He had made his way to the ranger station on foot, where a sympathetic park employee had provided first aid and access to a radio. Who were they? Devin asked. The people at the roadblock. Private security contractors, Elijah confirmed, working off the same lists as the official forces, but with more leeway in their methods. Bounty hunters especially, paid per capture. The same people who came to our apartment looking for us, Maya added. Elijah nodded. Part of what went wrong with their whole operation. Too many different agencies, contractors, lists. No central coordination. Created chaos, gaps, and overlaps. As they talked into the night, the radio continued to bring updates from across the country. The narrative has shifted dramatically. What had begun as a government crackdown was now being characterized as a failed coup attempt by rogue elements within the administration. Investigations were being announced. Resignations tendered. Arrests made. Not of the citizens originally targeted, but of those who had orchestrated their detention. It's damage control, Marcus said cynically. They overreached, got caught, and now they're throwing the middle managers under the bus while the real architects slip away. Maybe, Neil agreed. But it also means it's ending. At least this phase. The conversation turned to the future. Not just days, but weeks and months ahead. What would happen to the people who had been detained? How would trust in institutions be rebuilt? What safeguards could prevent another, perhaps more successful attempt? For Devin, the questions were more personal. Could he return to work as a data analyst, knowing how much data could be used? Should he join Maya in her legal advocacy? Or should he consider Neil's approach? Retreat, self-sufficiency, preparation for the next crisis. As dawn approached, the group finally dispersed to grab a few hours of sleep. Devin found himself sharing a small guest room with Elijah, who was already drifting off despite his injured arm. Hey, Devin said quietly. Thank you for everything. Elijah opened one eye. Don't mention it. Just returning a favor someone did for me once. He closed his eye again, then added, Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Devin lay back on his makeshift bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling in the forest outside. His phone, plugged into a solar charger, suddenly vibrated. A message had come through from his mother. Safe with friends in Tampa. Military protecting our neighborhood from vigilantes. Stay where you are until things stabilize. Love you. Relief washed over him. His mother was safe. Maya and Zoe were reunited with Neil. Elijah had survived. They had all made it through the first 24 hours of whatever this was. Coup, purge, algorithm gone wrong, practice run for authoritarianism. What came next would be challenging in different ways. The practical work of rebuilding, of justice and accountability, of ensuring such a thing could never happen again. The psychological work of processing trauma, of learning to trust, or not trust, the institutions that have shown themselves capable of turning on citizens. As exhaustion finally claimed him, Devin's last conscious thought was that the world had fundamentally changed in ways that would take years to fully understand. The America they had known yesterday was gone. What would replace it remained to be written. By them and millions of others who had lived through these hours and emerged, changed but unbroken. On the other side, the dawn light filtered through the window, painting the small room in the hues of hope and possibility. Outside, in cities and towns across the nation, the first day of whatever came next was beginning, and they would face it together. All right, I'm not gonna lie to you. This kind of thing scares the crap out of me. The idea that people could just get rounded up and taken to camps and things like that. I mean, we've seen it happen many, many, many times in history. The Germans did it. We did it. It's not great. So, like I said, this has nothing to do with current events or anything like that. It's just something that freaks me out, you know. And it doesn't always have to be zombies to give me a fright. Sometimes it could be something that is way more practical and realistic. And honestly, most of those things are usually the scariest things to me. So, hope you guys enjoyed the story. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.